delete my name. Please, I'm begging you to delete my name. Those are the words of a woman who was a victim of Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking and rape conspiracy when she was a teenager, when she was legally underage in the state of Florida. She is one of the survivors who has never come forward publicly. Never. We've seen dozens of survivors speaking publicly outside of the Capitol last year, urging Congress to pass a law forcing the release of the Epstein files, a law that Congress passed and Donald Trump signed into law, surely expecting that his Justice Department, that he controls, would violate that law, as the Trump Justice Department has done. The Trump Justice Department keeps finding new ways to violate the law. They violated the deadline in the law by more than a month, and then they violated the requirement to deliver all of the Epstein files to Congress, not just a portion, and they violated the law requiring them to redact the names of the survivors of Jeffrey Epstein and the survivors of Jeffrey Epstein's co-conspirators, including the convicted co-conspirator Ghislaine Maxwell. The Trump-controlled Justice Department redacted the names of the three co-defendants of Jeffrey Epstein in a draft federal indictment that was dropped by Alex Acosta, who was then the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Florida, and then later became Donald Trump's Secretary of Labor during the first Trump administration. The indictment that Republican U.S. Attorney Alex Acosta decided not to pursue is 56 pages long and describes the sex trafficking crimes of Jeffrey Epstein beginning in 2002. That indictment was part of the Epstein files release that we got over the weekend, last Friday. The first page of that indictment has 3 redactions, and those 3 redactions right here on the first page of this indictment, let me get it into the camera. Those 3 redactions are the 3 names of Jeffrey Epstein's co-conspirators in this draft indictment, who the indictment says were employed by Jeffrey Epstein, quote, to perform, among other things, services as personal assistants. So the indictment describes those co-defendants literally leading children upstairs in Jeffrey Epstein's home for their first encounter with Jeffrey Epstein. Quote, in or around May 2004, defendant redacted led Jane Doe number 6 from the kitchen at 356 El Brillo Way upstairs to the master bedroom area at 358 El Brillo Way. In or around May 2004, defendant Jeffrey Epstein redacted Jane Doe 6, who was then a 16-year-old girl. Jeffrey Epstein's co-conspirator and co-defendants in this indictment, the one who led that girl upstairs to Jeffrey Epstein, is one of the people whose identity Donald Trump's Justice Department doesn't want you to know and was very, very careful to protect. But that same Trump Justice Department did not protect many of those girls who were led upstairs by Jeffrey Epstein's criminal co-conspirators, including Ghislaine Maxwell. Attorney Bradley Edwards represents hundreds of the survivors of Jeffrey Epstein and has told us on this program that only a very small number of the total number of survivors have ever come forward publicly. Bradley Edwards is now asking federal judges to intervene and force the Trump Justice Department to, as one of his clients pleads, delete my name. In a filing to the federal judges, Bradley Edwards revealed some of the violations of the Epstein Transparency Act that the Trump Justice Department has committed. 1, documents in which minor victim 1 had her name revealed 20 times in a single document. After reporting the violation, Department of Justice redacted her name 3 additional times, leaving 17 instances still unredacted as of this filing. 2, an email listing 32 minor child victims with only one name redacted and 31 left visible despite Department of Justice's possession of those names. 3. FBI 302 victim statements with full first and last names unredacted, including for minor victims. 4. Handwritten FBI interview notes with minor victims' full names unredacted at the top and throughout. 5. Documents containing victims' names alongside dates of birth, bank information, driver's license numbers, email addresses, or home addresses. 6. Documents where victims' names are redacted in some places but not others within the same document. 7. Documents where redactions are pencil thin, revealing the complete name and email address beneath. 8. Documents where photographs are properly redacted in one instance and appear fully unredacted nearby. 9. Hundreds of documents exposing the names of 4 women who have been in near constant communication with the Department of Justice since December, requesting protection. Donald Trump's Justice Department did not give them that protection. Bradley Edwards told the judges the Department of Justice cannot plausibly characterize this as error, negligence, or bureaucratic failure. But that is exactly what Donald Trump's Justice Department claimed: human error. Today, the Trump Justice Department said in a letter to the judges, quote, the department now has taken down several thousands of documents and media that may have inadvertently included victim identifying information due to various factors, including technical or human error. This is the same Trump Justice Department that for the first time in history raided a county office to seize voting records last week. Not copies of voting records, the actual voting records. How many human errors do they plan to make with those voting records? This is the same Trump Justice Department that now claims it is going to conduct an investigation of what video shows clearly to be the murder of registered nurse Alex Preddy in Minneapolis by federal Border Patrol agents sent there by Donald Trump. How many human errors does Donald Trump's Justice Department plan to make in that investigation that they first said was completely unnecessary? Republican Senator Rand Paul, who is chairman of the committee with jurisdiction over the Homeland Security Department, said he doesn't trust the FBI to investigate the murder of Alex Preddy.
Could the FBI have a credible investigation?
That's a question. I don't know the answer to that.
Maybe not, is what you're saying.
Well, there were some pretty immediate conclusions on whether or not you're allowed to carry a gun at a rally, which were incorrect and not really reflective of the Second Amendment or the law. So I don't know who should do this. I think really if it were an independent group outside of the federal government would be better, actually.
Attorney Bradley Edwards' pleading to the judges included direct statements from some of his clients whose identities have been revealed. One of the Epstein survivors in Bradley Edwards' filing, identified as Jane Doe number 5, wrote this to the judges. I have never come forward. I am now being harassed by the media and others. This is devastating to my life. Please pull my name down immediately, as every minute that these document with my names are up, it causes more harm to me. Please, I'm begging you to delete my name. I can only imagine the devastation your errors are causing to so many other victims of Jeffrey Epstein. Wasn't the only job to redact victims' names? Hasn't every person with authority promised repeatedly that victims have nothing to worry about because our names will be redacted? Hasn't the entire delay of producing documents been allegedly because you have been redacting names? Judge Richard Berman of the Southern District of New York has scheduled a hearing on the issues raised by Bradley Edwards for Wednesday at 11:30 a.m. It's not just names. Epstein survivor Annie Farmer, who testified convincingly to a jury in Ghislaine Maxwell's criminal trial that resulted in a unanimous verdict of guilty by that jury, told the New York Times, quote, "It's hard to imagine a more egregious way of not protecting victims than having full nude images of them available for the world to download." Yes, Donald Trump's Justice Department did that. in direct violation of the law passed by our first guest tonight that forced the Trump Justice Department to deliver the Epstein files to Congress. Congressman Ro Khanna, along with his original co-sponsor of the legislation, Republican Thomas Massie, gained the support and confidence of Epstein survivors by showing them the language in the law that they were proposing that made it impossible for Donald Trump's Justice Department to release photographs of them, any kind of photographs of them. The law made it impossible for Donald Trump's Justice Department to release their names, their addresses, their email addresses. The law made it impossible for Donald Trump's Justice Department to release any information about the survivors, but the Trump Justice Department refused to follow the law. The last presidential election meant that the Justice Department would abandon the mission of upholding the law and simply break the law at will with impunity and Donald Trump's approval. The name that appears in the Epstein files, second only to the name Epstein, is the name Trump. The New York Times, using its own search software, revealed this count of Trump mentions. Using a proprietary search tool, the New York Times identified more than 5,300 files containing more than 38,000 references to Mr. Trump, his wife, his Mar-a-Lago club in Florida, and other related words and phrases in the latest batch of emails, government files, videos, and other records released by the Justice Department. Previous installments of the Epstein files, which the department released late last year, included another 130 files with Trump-related references. None of those files include any direct communication between Mr. Trump and Mr. Epstein. Mr. Trump is one of half a dozen prominent men about whom the agency's files include salacious information, according to an email an FBI official wrote to a colleague last year. The newly released files also include notes and transcripts of interviews that federal investigators conducted with Mr. Epstein's victims, some of whom describe interactions with Mr. Trump, for instance. Handwritten notes from one interview in September 2019, about a month after Mr. Epstein died by suicide in a Manhattan jail, say that a victim whose name has been redacted recalled being transported in a dark green car to Mar-a-Lago to meet Mr. Trump. This is a good one, huh? The victim recalls Mr. Epstein saying to Mr. Trump. The notes do not suggest misconduct by Mr. Trump. Mr. Trump has denied any wrongdoing in connection to Mr. Epstein. Leading off our discussion tonight is Democratic Congressman Ro Khanna of California. He's a member of the House Oversight Committee. Congressman Khanna, the Trump Justice Department says they're finished. They said their release of the Epstein files is now everything that you asked for.
They're wrong. Here's what people should think. As disgusting as it is, what they have released, imagine what they are concealing. And the survivors are furious for the reasons you outlined, Lawrence. Bradley Edwards, the survivor's lawyer, is furious. They took more care to protect the rich and powerful men who raped or abused these underage girls than they did for the actual victims of the crimes. And this is why people think there are two tiers of justice under Donald Trump.
So what are the remedies at this point to try to obtain more of the Epstein files that are currently being withheld?
Three things. First, Thomas Massie and I have requested a meeting with Deputy Attorney General Blanche. Now, he has been so callous and flippant, going on TV saying this is just about men partying with Epstein, leaving out that people went to the island to rape underage girls. But he has said that he's open to meeting us, and he has said he's open to meeting Raskin. So we plan to look for the unredacted documents and see what else needs to be released. Second, the survivors can bring lawsuits with Judge Berman and Judge Engelmeyer. I expect that they will. And third, Massie and I retain the ability to file lawsuits in the Southern District of New York. But we are going to push for the rest of the files to be released while protecting the survivors.
We discovered in the Epstein files that Donald Trump's completely incompetent Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick is also as much of a liar about this as Donald Trump. He had claimed publicly that he met Epstein once, who was his next door neighbor in Manhattan, stepped into his house in Manhattan, his townhouse, for 5 minutes and left, never to have anything to do with him again. The Epstein files reveal that he, in fact, scheduled a rendezvous with Epstein on Epstein's Island.
Lawrence, I don't understand how people can just get away with blatant lies. I mean, the only thing saving Lutnick is that there are more egregious scandals, and we don't know where the media should focus. But you basically have someone who's a commerce secretary who lied to the American people. He said he had nothing to do with Epstein. Emails come out showing that he actually visited Epstein, that he brought his family to Epstein, and he needs to be asked, why did he lie? What is he trying to hide? Who is he trying to protect?
I know you worked very carefully to include the Epstein survivors in what you were doing, and you sought their approval for what you were doing. How does it feel to you tonight that what you promised them in the release of the Epstein files did not happen for all of them, that some of them, in fact, were exposed in these files?
I'm so angry, Lawrence. It's become personal for me. As you know, you're the one who connected me to Bradley Edwards, who then connected Thomas Massie and I to the survivors. These survivors have been in my office. They've talked about being abused and how it's like having a box and pushing that box away, but it never goes away. I've seen these people break down in tears in my office. This isn't politics. It's really become personal. And to see them betrayed when it all could have been avoided, that's why Thomas Massie and I asked the court for a special master. That's why we've been offering to meet with the Justice Department. That's why Bradley Edwards every day was saying to the Justice Department, consult us. And they did none of this. They've just been callous to these survivors. And they've been obsessed about protecting rich and powerful people who abuse them. And it's really a symptom of how our system has been co-opted by rich and powerful people, and how ordinary people don't feel like they have justice in Donald Trump's America.
So these files should be kept permanently at the Justice Department. If they're destroyed during the Trump years, of course, Donald Trump can pardon anyone in the Justice Department who destroys these files and completely get away with it and get away with issuing the pardon. But if they're not criminally destroyed in the Trump Justice Department, the next Justice Department, controlled by a Democratic appointed Attorney General, could release everything else that is in the Epstein files.
They could release it, and they must release it. And they must investigate what happened. When you have all these people who have gone to Epstein's Island, someone should ask them under oath, who did you see being abused there? Who did you see raping people there? Who did you see being paraded naked at parties? There needs to be not only the release, there needs to be an investigation about what happened. None of that has happened for decades. And it is the obligation of the next president to do that, to make the survivors whole, but also to show that the justice system actually works in this country.
Congressman Ro Khanna, thank you very much for starting off our discussions tonight.
Thank you, Lawrence.
Thank you. And coming up, Republican Senator Rand Paul doesn't trust the FBI to investigate the killing of Alex Preddy, and a Democratic senator is demanding an investigation of Donald Trump's so-called border czar, Tom Homan, for accepting $50,000 in cash from FBI undercover agents. That and more is next with Senator Sheldon Whitehouse. Today, the Minnesota Star-Tribune reports the Hennepin County Medical Examiner has classified Alex Preddy's death as a homicide. That is not news. A homicide is simply a death caused by another person, as we have reported on this program. Not all homicides are crimes. The Star-Tribune also reports, though, that the autopsy report, which has not yet been released, reveals that Alex Preddy suffered, quote, multiple gunshot wounds. Most of those multiple gunshot wounds were fired at Alex Preddy, and they were fired while all of the federal agents were walking backwards in the video away from the body of Alex Preddy, who was lying face down on the pavement, not moving, for most of the shots that were fired at him. Most of the federal agents present saw absolutely no threat from Alex Preddy whatsoever at any time, which is why most of the federal agents did not fire their guns. Only 2 of the agents made the decision to shoot and continue shooting at Alex Preddy. And the Republican senator, who's chairman of the committee with jurisdiction over those agents, said this.
I saw no evidence. I saw a man that was retreating. I mean, he went to the middle of the street. He didn't even obstruct traffic. He let a car go through. As the agents advanced on him, he retreated to the side of the street. A woman is violently pushed to the ground, and he turns to help her, and that's when he is grabbed from behind. I saw no evidence of him assaulting the police. I think we have to get through our hearing February 12th, and I think we have to see what the people who work for her say. But my advice to them, if they're watching and they come to testify, is if you come in and you're going to justify that this man was aggressively assaulting your police officers, that cannot be acceptable, and that's why they're lacking in trust.
The man who says he is now in charge of drawing down Donald Trump's invasion of Minneapolis was recorded by FBI undercover agents on video receiving $50,000 in a cash payoff during the last Trump presidential campaign. Democratic Senator Jackie Rosen of Nevada is now demanding that the Trump Justice Department Inspector General investigate the $50,000 undercover payoff to Donald Trump's so-called border czar, Tom Homan, who says he did nothing wrong. In a letter to the Deputy Inspector General of the Trump Justice Department, Senator Rosen says, I request that you conduct a robust investigation into Mr. Homan's acceptance of the $50,000 cash payment from undercover FBI agents and DOJ's handling of the case. Furthermore, given that it is unclear what happened to the $50,000 provided to Mr. Homan in the sting operation, it is critical for your office to determine how Mr. Homan later used this money, particularly if the payment was funded by taxpayer dollars. And today, in an indirect admission of mission failure in Minneapolis, Donald Trump's Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem issued a statement saying, effective immediately, we are deploying body cameras to every officer in the field in Minneapolis. Joining us now is Democratic Senator Sheldon Whitehouse of Rhode Island. He's a member of the Senate Judiciary Committee, also a member of the Senate Finance Committee and the Budget Committee. He's the top Democrat on the Senate Environment and Public Works Committee. Senator, the $50,000 question about Tom Homan has never been fully explored, and Tom Homan certainly has not fully responded to it.
No, I asked Attorney General Bondi about that in her hearing in the Judiciary Committee, and I didn't get an answer. We followed up with questions for the record. I went to Chairman Grassley to ask him to tell Attorney General Bondi that she should answer the question for the record truthfully, the way we expect all witnesses to answer. And then we followed up with a Freedom of Information Act request because we haven't had very good luck getting answers, let alone truthful ones, out of the Trump Department of Justice. So the step now to ask the Inspector General to examine this, I think, is merited. And it's kind of stunning that they aren't able to answer this question, and particularly when you have the Republican chairman of the Homeland Services Committee that oversees ICE and CBP saying that there's a problem of trust, that they are lacking in trust. What could be more lacking in trust than to send in as the replacement for that little person, Bovino, who behaved so badly that even in the Trump administration, he was too incompetent and dangerous to stay. This guy, this is the guy they chose to send in. This is the guy who's supposed to be the one who would restore trust. And he can't even tell the truth about what he did with $50,000 in bribe money received from FBI agents.
We just heard Rand Paul say he doesn't trust the FBI to do the investigation, and he doesn't trust the federal government to do the investigation of federal agents shooting and killing Alex Preddy in Minneapolis. Well, there's the local county attorney. They don't call them district attorneys. They call them county attorneys there, Mary Moriarty, who is investigating this, wants to investigate this, and just needs more cooperation from the the FBI that has custody of so much of the evidence.
Yeah, at this point, it seems that the federal government is not cooperating with local officials, not sharing evidence, and that is extremely, extremely unusual. When I was the U.S. attorney, the only reason that we would not cooperate with local officials in an investigation that they were interested in was because there was some problem with that local group. If we were looking into corruption in the city of Providence, which I did, then we would carve out the city of Providence Police Department because they would have to report up to the subject of our investigation. But in the ordinary course, it is Rule 1 elementary law enforcement practice that you put a task force together, you put a working group together, you bring in the local police because they can add resources, they can add value, they have their own evidence that they can support. So the fact that they're not doing this is almost an admission of culpability in itself. It is a flashing alarm that something is very wrong in the Trump DHS.
And before Donald Trump moved him out of Minneapolis, his commander of the invasion forces, Gregory Bovino, was on a phone call in which he voiced his own anti-Semitic feelings about the U.S. attorney there, who's Orthodox Jew and observes the Sabbath, and that was something that bothered Bovino greatly. This, in the administration, where they're going after institutions like Harvard University, claiming that Harvard is anti-Semitic and needs to be fixed by Donald Trump, who has probably employed more anti-Semites in the federal government than any other president.
Yeah, it makes it seem that that is pretty pretextual. And you see anti-Semitism sort of riddled throughout this administration, but nothing more visually telling than little Mr. Bovino, who looked like sort of a miniature version of an extra in a World War II Nazi movie.
We're going to squeeze in a commercial break here, Senator. And as you know, Tulsi Gabbard has gone where no previous intelligence official has gone, to seize voting records. That's next with Senator Sheldon Whitehouse. Tonight, Donald Trump's fully incompetent Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, responded to questions from Intelligence Committee Democrats about her participation in the FBI raid seizing voting records in Fulton County, Georgia. Tulsi Gabbard said, "My presence was requested by the president and executed under broad statutory authority to coordinate, integrate, and analyze intelligence related to election security, including counterintelligence, foreign and other malign influence, and cybersecurity. The FBI's intelligence, counterintelligence divisions are one of the 18 elements that I oversee." And the Wall Street Journal is reporting a U.S. intelligence official has alleged wrongdoing by Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard in a whistleblower complaint that is so highly classified, it has sparked months of wrangling over how to share it with Congress, according to U.S. officials and others familiar with the matter. The filing of the complaint has prompted a continuing behind-the-scenes struggle about how to assess and handle it, with the whistleblower's lawyer accusing Gabbard of stonewalling the complaint. Gabbard's office rejects that characterization, contending it is navigating a unique set of circumstances and working to resolve the issue. Back with us, Senator Sheldon Whitehouse. And Senator, as you know, Tulsi Gabbard also placed a cell phone call to Donald Trump with the FBI agents involved in the raid in Fulton County, Georgia, to have some kind of, I guess, discussion with the coach about how they ran the play.
Everything about this is highly suspicious. First of all, the search warrant that they were executing in Fulton County, Georgia, came out of a U.S. attorney's office and a magistrate judge in Missouri. And the local FBI office in Georgia was not involved. Now, I was a U.S. attorney, and sometimes your case in your district requires you to get evidence from another district. And what you do then is you have the local U.S. attorney get a warrant in the local area. So that would make sense, Georgia and Georgia. And then you would have the FBI agent be the affiant on the affidavit, and that would be from your home state, because you don't want to have to walk another FBI agent through the whole case. So you're in your state, the investigation is in your state, the FBI agent in your state provides the affidavit, and then in the state where you're going to get the warrant, an AUSA from that state gets the warrant. Very standard practice. Here, none of that happened. And worse than that, the special agent in charge in that district in Georgia seems to have been fired. They said he was resigned. We don't know yet. But anyway, spontaneously disappeared in the days before the execution of this warrant. He's the person who would have, been looking over this and seeing if that was legitimate behavior. The Missouri U.S. attorney who did this is not even a confirmed U.S. attorney. What he is an election denier with a paper record of election denial from his service in Missouri as an assistant attorney general, which creates a huge record for defendants to go after to allege, vindictive and unfair prosecution, and political pals with Ken Martin, the creepy guy who just got moved out of the Department of Justice and ran the weaponization working group for the Department of Justice. And that takes you back to Tulsi Gabbard, who says she stood up the weaponization working group, which is this bizarre group of Trumpy people across multiple federal agencies who basically conspired together across the agencies without necessarily going up the chain of command to their cabinet officials. They're running their own operation. And the purpose of that operation is to try to run political errands for Donald Trump using the offices of the United States government. And if all that's not enough, of course he has to call in, just like that Raffensperger call. You'd think he'd have the good sense to know, wait a minute, if this is election mischief and it's Georgia, maybe I shouldn't be making stupid phone calls. But every single piece of this is bad Department of Justice practice because it opens up avenues of inquiry for defendants. So the final question here is, will there ever be a defendant to ask questions about this? Or was the purpose of the seizure of those documents just to get them in the hands of Trump's election monkey wrenchers to try to rig elections in the future? And there's no plan to bring charges that would allow any of these inquiries to proceed.
Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, your guidance on this one, invaluable as usual. Thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
And coming up, a big win for Democrats in Texas in a district Donald Trump won by 17 points. The Democratic candidate for Texas State Senate in a special election on Saturday, Taylor Emmett, won by 14 points. He'll join us next and tell us how he did it. And so once again, we face the question, is Donald Trump lying, or is he losing cognitive ability, or is he just too old to remember what he did yesterday? Donald Trump was on the losing side of a special election in Texas on Saturday. On Election Day Saturday, Donald Trump posted a social media post telling people to get out and vote for the Republican candidate for state Senate, who he called a true MAGA warrior, who has my complete and total endorsement. The next day, Donald Trump claimed he had no memory of telling anyone to vote for a true MAGA warrior just the day before.
Mr. President, on Texas, a Democrat won the special election in an area that you had won by 17 points. What is your reaction to that?
I don't know. I didn't hear about it. Somebody ran where?
In Texas, a special election for legislative
The
seat.
9th state Senate seat.
I'm not involved in that. That's a local Texas race. You mean I won by 17
You did.
and this person lost? Things like that happen.
Our next guest is the winner of that election, Taylor Emmett, a former Air Force B-52 mechanic who is now a unionized factory worker for Lockheed Martin building fighter jets. In a district Donald Trump won by 17 points. Taylor Emmett, who has never run for office before, won by 14 points. And here is how he did it.
Growing up, my mom always told me not to talk about money at the dinner table. Well, sorry, Mom, because this campaign is all about money. It's about how much we get in our paychecks, how much we spend on groceries and health insurance, how much we pay in property taxes. So while my opponent helps billionaires get richer, I'm fighting for you. I'm Taylor Emmett, and I'm running for Texas Senate District 9 to make Texas work for you.
I'm Taylor Emmett's mom, and I approve this message.
And joining us now is Texas State Senator-elect Taylor Emmett. Thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much, Lawrence.
And I got to say, for me, I have no more questions about how you did it. Your mom put you over the top.
Shout out to my mom.
Yeah. I read today that the reason you got involved, the reason you decided to run, was frustration you experienced in your one attempt, your one interest in the state Senate, just trying to do something about veterans benefits, alerting people to veterans benefits that wouldn't have cost anyone a penny.
Yes, it was that. There was stuff before that, but that was really the straw that broke the camel's back. I was tired of seeing working folks get left behind in this state. We have a ton of folks that clock in early, leave late, and keep this state running, and we need to focus legislation around them.
And as you go forward now, you're going to have to, this is a special election, so it only gets you to the next election. You're pretty much starting to run for re-election almost immediately. How will you make that case to Texas voters going forward?
The hard work we put in has won us 2 elections so far in a very short amount of time. But we know listening and engaging the community is the best way to earn their trust. And when you earn their trust, you can be outspent like me 10-1 and still come ahead with a really powerful victory. This is not about partisan politics. That's what I want to make clear, is that we did the work. We focused on voters, no matter what side of the political aisle. And we just stuck to the major issues here that we've been hearing on knocking these doors, making these phone calls.
How much did you learn from voters? I know when you go into a race like this, you go in as a voter, so you know what you think matters. And I'm sure a lot of that is in the campaign. But how much of it did you learn from voters by campaigning?
So what I learned was that it's not just about working folks. We do need to work on that, but we also have a big problem with public schools here. And people are struggling in this economy. So just with that, we need to find a way to lower costs. I had a woman come up to me at one of my campaign events, and she was shook. She was the director of a cancer center here in district. And she said the people that come to get cancer treatment are choosing between their treatment and rent and their food. This is a major problem. This is a fire-alarm fire we have to address. But going back to the public schools, we have a voucher scam that's now being implemented here in our great state, and it's going to affect our public schools, which to me, we should hold sacred. They're not supposed to be partisan. We have to really invest in the next future of Texans.
Texas State Senator-elect Taylor Emmett, thank you very much for joining us tonight, and please come back as the campaign continues.
Thank you. Sounds good.
The big winner for Democrats in Texas, Taylor Emmett, gets tonight's last word.